chat, right when Brad comes in, you just put A because that's what they say in Canada. A. All right, here we go. Hey, Brad.
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah, don't you know A?
I know, right?
A.
I'm looking forward to getting started, eh?
Yeah. You're totally not related to real estate, but years ago I used to watch this show called Degrassi High, and I lived in Massachusetts, and I was like, how is it they're that close to us? It sounds so incredibly different, like.
That's right, Joey Jeremiah and his little hat, and I remember all that stuff. Yeah,
I'm quite a bit older than you, so I'm sure the Degrassi High I watched was a lot different than yours.
I don't think we're that much different.
I'm close to 50, so I'm like just there, just creeping up, just like right there. Anyways, okay, so Brad, they were talking to me, my subscribers were talking to me about the fact that you guys do have a bit of a housing crisis going on in Canada. I don't understand exactly what it is that your housing crisis is doing and what's causing it. Can you explain a little bit of what it is that's happening in Canada's real estate market?
For sure. So I'd say overall, on the whole, the real estate market across Canada has been strong and really strong for a couple of years. And the crisis has really been on the affordability side. As the prices continue to increase, we're seeing it go across all the provinces. We are a very large country for landmass, but we're generally congregated in a couple of small centers, places like Vancouver and Toronto.
Is that to stay warmer?
Yeah, pretty much. All together. And so in Vancouver, for example, Vancouver's housing crisis is really the fact that they've seen so much money come in from offshore. So much money, like it has in a lot of the coastal markets around the globe, has came over from places like China, getting money out of the country and putting it into these sort of coastal real estate markets around the globe. And Vancouver's been the benefactor of that, but much to the chagrin of many Canadians who are trying to live and work there and are forced to buy and sell in a market where it's been really inflated because of this foreign money that's came in, leaving a lot of these properties to actually sit completely empty. Then we've seen that spill over across most of British Columbia. When we go further east to Toronto, our housing crisis more is related to, once again, affordability when it comes to apartment condos, and just single family homes now in the Toronto area are as high as $1.3 million for a single family home, which is ridiculous. And apartment condos are anywhere from $650,000 to $900,000 for just 600 or 700 square feet. It's really kind of crazy how we've seen our market go up and just continually go up. And so what's happened is that the government's actually in Canada has actually tried to make regulation and cooling of the markets the law of the land. So what they've done is they've brought in things like a mortgage stress test. So that means that if you qualify, or let's say the interest rates are 2%, for example, on a 5-year mortgage term, you actually need to qualify for 4% in order to purchase that property. So you only pay the 2%, but you need to qualify for that extra 2%. And that's to try to cool the market and make sure that only well-qualified people are actually buying these properties. But now, of course, since the pandemics came in, everything's kind of in upheaval. And I'm in the province of Alberta. I'm in the city of Calgary. We're in an oil and gas producing city. And because of that, we're experiencing a whole different housing crisis that's sort of separate from the rest of Canada, where pricing has went down, inventory has went up, and sellers are having a really hard time, whereas it's virtually flipped across all the rest of Canada.
So these people that are buying it from foreign entities, they're buying the house just to buy a house and just leaving it empty? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so much so that when the money would come in from China into Vancouver, it was coming at such a rate that the pricing was going up like 25, 30% year over year. And then it was creating it super hard for normal Canadians just to go and actually buy and live in downtown Vancouver. And the properties would sit there empty. And the city or the province actually instituted what was called a foreign buyer's tax. that said, listen, if you're going to do this, if you're going to buy a property and you're a foreign buyer, you're going to have to pay us like another 10%.
Okay. So yeah, so because they know that they're just going to leave the property there. Now, do they get in trouble? Like here, you could buy a property and sure you could leave it abandoned, but if you're not maintaining that property, like the cities and stuff get all over you. You can't just leave a structure there to rot and die. You have to maintain it and make sure that there's utilities to it. You can't just leave a structure to die. Is that how it is in Canada as well?
So, I mean, I would say yes. It's a little bit different. That's one of the reasons why the apartment condos have been such an attractive investment for offshore money, because there's just less to maintain. They can basically shut off the water and not activate the power to the unit. And it's already inside the larger building envelopes. They have very little maintenance costs when it comes on a monthly basis. So that's why they get away with it there versus a single family home that in Vancouver, which could be anywhere from $1.5 million to $3 or $4 million for a home that in my market would be $700,000 to $1.5 million, and in many other people's housing markets across Canada and the States might be more like $300,000 to $600,000. So there's a huge disparity in what you can buy, say in Texas, for $750,000 versus what you can buy in Calgary or a place like Vancouver.
So what are they doing? Because I mean, one of them, and a lot of the things that I do on my channel is for people that are looking for affordable housing options. Do they have affordable housing options for people that are just starting out, that are, they make okay money, they could qualify for a loan, but is there a house even available that's affordable? Is that possible to find? Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not that it's impossible. It just depends on what your idea of affordable is. In my opinion, it doesn't sound very affordable. But I would say, I come from the school of I bought my first home in 2004. It was a large new walkout 2-story home that was basically $250,000. That same home was worth about $600,000 now. So the starter homes, which would be say like a 30 or 40-year-old 1,100 square foot townhome, for example, like one I just sold last week, it's $283,000, 2 bedrooms, 2 bath. So it's
a starter home is $283,000.
Yeah.
That's not affordable.
If you want to get a single family home in our city, you're starting at about $375,000.
Now, like you said that everybody's compact in that area. What about like the suburbs? Like I'm a suburb of Baton Rouge. Of course, it's a little less expensive than going into the city of Baton Rouge, but is it a little less expensive in a suburb area?
So, I mean, the biggest issue with our city is that we are sort of home to a lot of oil and gas companies, corporate headquarters. So because of that, we get a large white collar community. Mm-hmm. And then there's this also equally fairly wealthy blue collar community that does a lot of the work that the oil and gas industry creates. So a lot of like the roughnecks, and they work on the pipelines, and they're welders and they're builders and they're all that sort of stuff. So, and the housing industry obviously creates a lot of skilled workers and well-paying jobs as well. So for us in Canada, we also don't really have an additional set of workers that we can tap into. Like everyone, we have no like non-immigrant workers. Like all of our workers are, if they are immigrant workers, they are legalized Canadians. So we are seeing, we see that, there's really generally a decently high level of income for, I think, the average Canadian. I see someone asked a question about how much do people earn here.
Yeah, how much is it?
I mean, I would say that in Canada, we still have a relatively high level of income, maybe a household income of around household income about $83,000 to $84,000. So
for a family?
Per family.
Okay.
Yeah. And then that's kind of across all of Alberta. And we're one of the higher income earning provinces. However, we're one of the most affordable provinces as well, just because of the negative opinion people have about oil and gas right now.
Huh.
which is
strange.
Kind of popular.
Not here in a good old United States. We like ourselves some oil and gas.
Yeah. Hey, construction cronies. What's up, Alberta?
Yes. He says, we're in Edmonton. Homes are way overpriced here. Our first home would cost us $385,000 and the bank wanted us to put down $100,000. We both work and have average credit. I have a question about that real quick. So I didn't know if home loans work a little bit different. Like here you can do like 0% financing where you put down very little. We have these FHA loans. Do they have that kind of thing in Canada?
So they do. They have something called a CMHC insured loan, which is a Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation loan. And that's anything under 20% down.
Okay.
So you can put a minimum of 5% down, and anything between 5 and 20% is going to be an insured mortgage, and that you're going to also pay extra money for that insurance. So yeah, that's the real issue. And then if you don't want to pay that extra money to the insurance companies, to the CMHC, you have to put 20% down or more. And so there's a lot of rules around even for property investors. You can buy a second and a third property at only 5% down as well. But a lot of property investors get it kind of backwards. They buy their primary residence first and then are kind of handcuffed and never able to get into the investor market. And the people that have done really well, I know locally, are people who had to, because it's very hard to get credit, and banks aren't so easy to loan, and they have sort of high lending restrictions, which was a benefit for us in 2008, 2009, when so much of the state's banking system was going through so much chaos. We had a relatively stable bank at that time. But it's hard to kind of qualify. So you really need to, if you want to get to a spot where you own multiple properties, you got to pretty much start with that starter rental and do one or two of those before you ever choose a home for your family, or you have to just make a ton of income at some point in your life. Everybody
I've known that is in their job is investing in properties, their first homes that they ever bought, they bought as rental units. Yeah. They didn't even live in it. They rented a dive.
Yeah, exactly.
And they bought two investment properties. Once those started really making revenue, then they were like, all right, we have a stable job. The spouse has a stable job. So they, now we'll go ahead and buy our own house. But they always use that as their income property. And now this one couple I know, they have 37 properties. That's his job, is to maintain properties.
Yeah, but that's the whole trick to property investing, is if you can delay gratification. That's the whole trick to life. Delay gratification, have a bigger reward later on. That's it. And that completely applies to properties.
Robert says, is that Canadian dollars? So yeah, that would be Canadian dollars, 283,000 Canadian
pesos, we call them.
Yeah, but I don't know what the exchange rate is for, I should have probably looked that up beforehand.
I can tell you.
Oh, look that up. So
so $1 US would be equal to about, $1 Canadian dollar. How does that work? We're worth about at 132. $1.
Yeah, I knew that your money was worth a little higher, because I get AdSense and my Canadian dollars are always like, ooh, that was more than a dollar. Construction Coney says, we can buy cheap houses in crappy neighborhoods, of course. Yeah, but crappy neighborhoods need rental properties too. Yeah. We have this thing too here. I don't know if you guys have it, but we have something called Section 8 housing. So you can buy a house that the renters get subsidies from the government themselves, but the rent money comes straight from the government. So it's an automatic in your account every single month. Section 8 income properties. Sometimes it's a portion of the rent. Sometimes it's all the rent, but it's nice because we don't have a lot here, especially. We don't have a lot of properties, apartment buildings, that kind of thing to rent. So you can rent, you can buy some standalone houses and have them Section 8, and then you get the income that comes in. And if they destroy the property, the government has to fix it. It's not on you. Now, if it's something that's wrong with it, you have to fix it right away. But if they mess up your house, they get kicked out and everything. So,
well, I would say this is the one thing that Canada is really struggling with right now, and I think any nation that has a real run up in house prices at any point in time does, and that is how are we going to keep the dream of home ownership a reality for the next generation? And I think that's the big challenge we're facing here, because land is so expensive, trades are so expensive, materials are so expensive, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of government appetite for creating affordable housing at the scale that's needed to actually address the problem.
And that is true in the United States as well. Affordable housing options are dwindling more and more. And then with everything that's happened since March, we won't say the name because you get demonetized, but ever since that, everything that happened with that, building materials have gotten even more expensive because there was the supply chain problem. So, that got crippled for a period of time. Then we had numerous amounts of weird natural disasters that happened around here. So between, earthquakes, what is that? Fires, hurricanes, and we've had 6 this year, by the way, in Louisiana, like unprecedented type of weather systems that have come through. Those people get the building materials first. So, people that are looking for affordable housing options, they're kind of limited on what they can get and what can be shipped right now because the supply chain is crippled right now. Oh, we got a super sticker from Chad. Thanks, Chad. He gave me a Canadian $5, but that's like $7. Thanks, Chad. Chad, if you have a question, go ahead and throw it in the chat.
Bubble. That's like $375 US. That's what that is.
You think? No, I think it's the other way around.
No.
Your dollar's worth more.
No, we're worth less.
That's really?
Yeah, I think it works out to like 68 cents on the dollar, 68 US cents for every Canadian dollar.
Construction cronies.
Not to take anything away from you, though.
Whatever. Hey, I love every penny I get. I'm never gonna complain. It's always nice to be thought of. Construction crony says any single parent with struggling these days, the system is designed and requires both parents to work unless there's a doctor or a lawyer. It's very similar here in the United States. I mean, if you are working a lower income job and you're by yourself and you're not getting any kind of help from, any kind of spousal support or child support, it's a tough road. It's very difficult to make it on your own. I don't know how single parents, I applaud them. I don't know how they do it. I really don't, because I lose my mind on a daily basis and I have a husband, I have somebody helping me. Australia saw what was happening with Canada housing problem, and then they said, hold my beer, and showed them how it's done. Started at houses in Sydney, an hour plus from the city, and are starting at $750,000. Holy, $750,000.
Yes.
What in the world? So basically they were trying to get as many I'm just trying to understand. So in Australia, they were trying to get as many foreign investors to come in and buy their expensive properties. Is that how that works?
No, I guess this would be my understanding of it, is that a lot of the foreign money that came in, it landed in coastal cities, and it makes sense. And Australia has been the beneficiary of a lot of outgoing Chinese money. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, our fellow Australian here, or the Australian in the comments, Mr. Giuseppe. That would be my summary of it. I've got some good friends that just moved back to Brisbane, and I know some different agents out of Brisbane, and I mean the market is incredible there. It's incredible.
I like it.
They do things differently too. They actually, in Australia, a lot of the big markets will actually sell properties in the city via auction. So everyone just shows up and they have the gavel and everything, and they open the bids, they start and they bid up the properties. And it really, especially in an upticked market, in a market that's moving higher, that creates, in my opinion, like a real frenzy, and it really artificially inflates properties high.
They did that with foreclosed properties because there were so many and investors were buying them. They did these auctions like that. We did get a couple super stickers, by the way. We got Urban Explorer says, this is worth $7. And that's true.
That is. That is.
He's in England.
Yeah.
And then David sent me a super sticker. Thank you very much, David. I appreciate you.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, that's really nice. And then Chad says, yeah, sorry, it's worth less. All right. So Faith says, I'm going to be happy to live simply. I just want a nice sized cottage, a frame with a loft and like a loft yippee. Yeah, that's what I want.
Yeah.
When I'm going to move away from my house and my kids have moved out of the house, I want to buy 3 tiny homes. One for Eddie, one for myself, and one for a studio. And maybe have like a garage off to the side so he can go tinker in the garage. But I want it on like 3 acres of land in the middle of nowhere, Bill. That's my ideal home. But I don't know. I don't know if it's even going to be affordable because even land is going up really high. But what I consider high is like what's an acre of land in your area? Can you get raw land?
You can buy raw land. I'm on the edge of Calgary, and if you go to the acreage communities that are within, say, a 5 or 10 minute drive of the city, you're going to be paying around $175,000 an acre. And then, yeah, but if you're willing to get way out there, like not even way out, you much further away though, you can get like 30, 40 acres for 450,000. So it's bringing your cost per acre down quite a bit, maybe to $10,000 or $15,000 an acre. Just really depends. But there are a lot of affordable places yet in Alberta, just as there are in British Columbia and where I'm from, which is Saskatchewan. So all of Western Canada has that. It's just that you're sacrificing access to things like essential services and dentists and doctors and all that stuff nearby, and Costco's and grocery stores and gas stations. So there's always some kind of toss up, and usually people come to these big city centers because of the economy, because of the jobs, and then so you get kind of stuck on the same little train tracks.
Yeah, it's like a hamster wheel.
Yeah.
Mr. Guitarist says, do you think the U.S. housing market will crash or prices will come down? The price increment in pandemic makes no sense, even with lower interest rates. So I don't know if you're aware. I'm sure you are because you have plenty of American real estate friends. But the housing prices here since March have gone crazy. In a million years, I never thought that this would create such a frenzy for people to purchase homes, to the point where people are paying cash over list price just to get into a house because the interest rates are so low. And the difference between the housing market in 2008, 2009, like when it really fell apart, was that people were buying them with really crappy loans, stated income loans with no equity. The difference now is that people do have equity in their homes, but they're losing their jobs. And if they can't pay the mortgage, a lot of them are taking what they call as a forbearance. So they're tacking those payments onto the end. I can't see how it isn't going to happen if these people cannot find work. Some areas still do not have the ability to open up their businesses. If you can't open a business and you don't have any money, there's only so long your mortgage company is going to let you tack that at the end. And trust me when I tell you, if you have some equity in there, some people will argue with me. They're like, oh, they'll give it back to you. I'm like, nope. No. They'll fee you to death until they eat up all of your equity. Trust me on that. I've never seen it. Somebody said, well, I had $30,000 worth of equity and they said after it's foreclosed, I'll get some of that back. I'm like, 3 years later, I'm like, did you get any of that back? They're like, well, after the fees and the court cases and everything else, no, I didn't get any of it back. I'm like, who knew? Yeah. And they're like, I'd like to see a bank that's going to take my equity. I'm like, I like to see a bank that isn't.
Well, exactly. And
they always win.
The thing that you can guarantee with everything that's happened this year is right now what we see is it's been a different situation across incomes, right? So we see the lower income has been affected far greater. People in the service industry, small business owners, like a lot of people would call that the economic engine of a country. Those people have been oftentimes affected greater than people that are higher up the income ladder. And so when you think about whether or not the housing prices will crash or not, what is like the worst thing that could happen? Well, the worst thing that could happen is that the housing doesn't come down and step down the ladder the same way the economy does, meaning then that at least when the economy starts to come back, housing still becomes accessible. But what I've seen time and time again is this disparity grow between the rich and the poor. And unfortunately, I think what we're going to see is that the housing is not going to drop at the same rate, in my opinion, as it will. It won't, not proportionally to how it affects how this whole situation worldwide is going to affect the people at the lower end of the income scale. And I see that in Canada right now. Like as soon as this all came out, as soon as this all happened, what the CMHC came out and said was that housing across Canada, because our overheated pricing and overheated real estate markets, and when they talk about the Canadian housing market, they're talking about Vancouver and Toronto because they just dwarf the rest of the country.
The rest of you guys don't matter.
Exactly, pretty much. It's like we're a small percentage of that. But when they say it goes like it was so overheated, they actually came out, and the head of the CMHC, like the housing insurer for all mortgages across Canada, came out and said properties are going to drop between 9 and 18%, and in oil-producing provinces up to 25%. Up to 25%. So that, like, I'm a homeowner in an oil-producing province. I work in an oil-producing province.
So your government dictates your. So the government dictates how much your properties can.
No, they just can't. The actual official came out and said, this is what we are forecasting.
Oh, I thought they were like, hey, by the way, now your house is tomorrow going to be worth 25% less.
No, we're not socialists or anything.
Oh, that's what I was like, what?
No, they came out and they said that, hey, listen, this is what we're forecasting is going to happen to housing. And of course, because of everything that was going on, there was no showings being allowed, all that sort of stuff. So after 3 or 4 months, the market started to come back like it did in the States. And we started to see increase in sales year over year, all that sort of stuff. But what's really happened, which is crazy, is even in my town, which is very, very in a deep recession for 5 years now because of the oil and gas market, even still, we're 5% up year over year, which is kind of nuts because our town shouldn't be up. We should be way down in pricing, but even here it's happening that we're up. So will it happen that we're still yet to see this big crash in Canadian housing? Well, I don't know, because never have I ever seen such a dislocation of like the real economy and this sort of false printed money, inflated low interest environment that seems to really be playing with the way this whole world economy works, or at least the housing markets. And I actually heard a really smart guy in Canada. His name is Steve Saretsky. So if anyone is a Canadian that's interested in the Canadian housing market, I watch this guy every week because he's just a brilliant mind on it. It's the Steve Saretsky Show out of Vancouver. He's a realtor, and just like Kristina, he's here to just have conversation about what's actually going on, not just try to sell you a house. And what he says is when we look at the asset class of like housing going up in value, and people wonder how can that happen during a pandemic and a recession and high unemployment and all that stuff, how can that actually happen? Well, housing's not going up. It's the value of the currency is going down. And all the asset classes are going up. That's why it's more money for a head of lettuce right now, or a 2x4, or all these other things that are like a real asset versus just currency. So our currency in Canada has been devalued, and that's where we're seeing this rising in housing, because it's an asset class that is dislocated from the currency.
That is the printed money problem. And it was funny to me, the first time that I ever heard about printed money was from Ulysses S. Grant, of all things. Yeah. He was president, right? And he was trying to get America out of a hole, so that's what he kept doing. He just printing money. And they wrote in this book, they're like, and that was a lesson that Americans learned, that you can't print more money to get yourself out of a debt hole. And I'm like, then why are we still doing this?
Yeah, exactly.
Doing this debt hole thing, apparently. David said, I was trying to buy in Irving, California 2 years ago. A starter home was worth $1 million. 1,200 square feet townhouse with a 2-car garage, no yard. We moved to Las Vegas. Yeah, I can see why. But even Las Vegas during the housing like boom, holy cow. Like everybody and their brother was buying a house out there. You didn't have to do anything. You just put a house out there and I mean, a sign in the yard. You didn't even have to list it. Or buying in Las Vegas like crazy. And when it fell hard. Fell hard in Florida too. Same kind of thing. It was just so terrible. So Karen says you can't refinance either if you took a forbearance unless you pay it all back. Yes, that is correct. So with the CARES Act, there was an act that they went into place after the whole thing started. They gave all the Americans a little check to kind of get you through this time, and the option to take the forbearance, so where you put the payments at the end. Mm-hmm. So some banks, for some reason, decided to sign people up for it that never even asked for it. So since the interest rates were so low, people were like, we're at home. We might as well get our paperwork together and get a refinance because, we're at a, 5%. We might as well take advantage of the almost under 3%. And then they go in, they're going to sign in. They're like, no, we can't because you took a forbearance. So they're like, we've been making our payments. We made our payments. So that it was another thing that was like, banks just automatically sign people up for it. And I don't know if they did that because they got some kind of government incentive. I don't know what the reasoning behind it was. But even if you just called to get information about it, just talk to your lender, they automatically did it. They just pushed a button, even though you didn't sign off on it. Isn't that insanity?
It is insane, but I've heard lots of this stuff out of the States sometimes. I remember there was a Wells Fargo thing not that long ago where they're opening up accounts for people and then feeing them to death with all these things and coming back on them. See, the Canadian banking system has always been fairly sound. Mm-hmm. And I would say our government's response to everything that's been happening this year, they did provide a couple of very valuable things that kind of kept the economy alive. One of the things was called CERB. It was the Canadian Economic Response. And then I don't know what the B was for.
Boon. Bad.
Boon. And it was, the CERB. And so basically anyone that was out of work got $2,000 a month just to kind of help pay their rent, buy groceries, kind of keep things going because of the shutdowns. And they actually did that for like 6 months. They offered small businesses up to $40,000 loan interest-free for 2.5 years. And if you paid it back inside those 2.5 years, you'd only have to pay back $30,000. So there was a lot of small businesses. There were a lot of people that were probably on the brink that these loans kind of helped them go, but help them stay afloat. But no one really knows where this is all going to kind of play out. And I think the reality is it's going to be difficult and it'll take a long time to sort all this stuff out. But there will be like an actual genuine, I think, growth on the other side of this, like a boom like you saw like post World War II, and after you actually kind of get through some of this stuff. And then even in our own province, before this all kind of came in this year, we were starting to diversify away from oil and gas. So we were starting to do the steps that we needed to do in order to make a better, stronger local economy that wasn't so dependent on oil and gas prices swooping up and down and pipelines being approved. And yeah, I heard Biden's not going to approve Keystone, so we'll see how that goes for our province.
No politics. No politics.
No.
Okay.
I don't even do anything with that stuff. But
Faye Grace gave us a super chat. She says, "Love this."
Hey, perfect, Faye. Thank you.
Yeah. I want to know, like, I do a lot of things with alternative housing on my channel when it has to do with manufactured homes and tiny homes and modular homes. Yeah. Is that something that is prevalent in your area? Do they allow for people to have those kinds of homes, maybe outside the city a little bit? I know that you can't get a manufactured home inside a city. Even in our area, they're outside. You have to wait to get outside the city to have a manufactured home. But modular homes look like regular houses. There's nothing that's physically different than a regular traditional built home, but they are less expensive because they're easy to travel and assemble. Is that something that you guys have there?
So we don't see so much with modular homes, but we do see it more in terms of, we do see some manufactured homes. So for example, we do have some within the city as well. And that's just because I think these were spots that were previously 25, 30, and 45 years ago were not within the city. They were on the city limits. And then just as the city grew around them and just kind of kept those areas for that. So I know even from us in a very sort of, I would say like a middle income to maybe even affluent community, just a probably 7-minute drive from my house, there is a small manufactured, like a trailer home community there. So we see some of that.
Anything built before 1976 is considered a mobile or trailer mobile home. Anything built after 1976 is considered a manufactured home.
Okay, so, yeah, it's actually kind of interesting because anything before 1976 is incredibly hard to get a mortgage on in Canada.
You can't even do it here.
Yeah, and
you have to go personal loan.
Then you can start to go, yeah.
I mean, you can with an actual house, but not a manufactured or what you consider a mobile home. It's almost impossible.
So when you call it modular home, what you're saying is that people are essentially buying a home or a kit?
Yeah, right? Basically it's like a kit. So all the assembly, the walls or everything are put together. They come together in a box and they assemble it on site, almost like Lego system. So everything is already pristinely measured before you even get there, or it doesn't connect even correctly. It's like they just slide the pieces into place. Now, when you get a manufactured mobile home, that is already, it comes in 2 sections. They snap it together. It's done in a day. But a modular home, they're constructing it. There is construction involved. It's just a lot less construction. It gets it done twice as fast because most of that stuff is already done in the factory prior to being at the site.
Yeah, so we don't see a lot of modular, but we definitely see manufactured, and a lot of it ends up being in more rural, smaller acreages in rural communities. So outside of the city in good ways.
Can you do tiny homes there?
It's very difficult. It's very difficult. So there is some allowance for tiny homes, and they're starting to do that more and more as our city is trying to densify. So they're trying to get more people into the core. And so what they're doing is encouraging some of these older homes that are 40, 50 years old that have back alleys to actually take down their double car garage and put a tiny home suite above it, or one beside it, as long as it only, it doesn't take up too much of the actual land use, like the actual space of the land. And they're preferring to do that because they want to add more density to the actual core rather than just this large spread out suburbia like we're getting, because it's, it's more expensive for them to run like life services out to, for example, right? So it's harder and harder when they already have a good infrastructure in place.
We spread. Americans spread. We spread out.
There's no reason for us not to spread out here. We got nothing but land. But Calgary is one of the largest cities, like per square mile. Up here we call it per square kilometer. Pretty much in North America, it's a massive city.
Will there be a crash in 2021 in Charlotte? I suggest you talk to somebody in Charlotte to find that out, but I don't see how any area would be any different in the United States. Everybody's has the same thing going on. People have lost their jobs. Many people have taken the forbearance. Some people still haven't gotten back to work. So I can't see of any area not at least having some areas that get depressed and have a little bit of a crash. I'm looking to buy new construction. There's lots of agents. Contact me, email me. I'll give you a bunch of agents' names out in that area. No politics.
This is like a safe space, guys. This is a safe space, and I love it.
Faye said, my dad says trailer home. My dad he says trailer home. My dad corrects me all the time when I do it. Yeah, you can't. Nope, no, not a trailer home. There's two different things.
If you I grew up thinking of him as like that, so it's just sorry. Apologies.
Don't forget to hit the like button. That's what Faye says. Yeah. Oops, wrong one. She says hit the like button, guys. Hit the little thumbs up button.
Good call, Faye.
Mobile homes have wheels. Now, did you know that tiny homes, that you can have a tiny home that is on wheels, and that's something completely different. And it's actually built to different standards here in the United States. They are actually built to RV standards and not actually to home construction standards. And if they have wheels on them and they're travel down the road, they're not meant for long-term living. I don't know if that's the same there in Canada. I don't even know if that interests you, but just to give you a little.
No, that does. And that would make sense. That would make sense. If you ever did the mistake that I did of buying a brand new RV at some point in your life, and you look inside some of the cabinets, you realize that you just bought a bunch of cardboard. Just a bunch of cardboard.
Yeah.
Not a place you'd want to live long term.
No, and you can have one of those ones on wheels, and you can actually keep them in an RV park, but sometimes they won't even allow you to put your tiny home in that area for a long period of time. They'll say, well, you can stay here during these months, but you're gonna have to get out afterwards because they're not intended for long-term use, and you actually have to give a little certificate that says that it's an RV. But some people run into a problem with that when they build their own. Thank you. What is your email address? You can email me at info@KristinaSmallhorn.com. Okay. The Barcelona government got so sick of overseas investors buying up houses and leaving them vacant. They have started saying, if you don't fill them, we will with affordable housing thoughts with affordable house. Okay. So basically they're saying that, you bought this building that's sitting vacant. If you don't start doing it, we're going to throw affordable housing units next to it, or you're going to throw people that need a house. Yeah. I'm not 100% sure, but I know that in Hawaii, they had a bunch of foreign investors years ago. I mean, I'm talking like 1992 that had bought a bunch of stuff. I mean, they had a bunch of foreign investors that had bought out big sections of Hawaii. And of course, it's a vacation spot. But they turned around and like, look, if you have to be in here for X amount of period of time in order for you to keep the property. You have to do it. And so some people sold them and some people kept them, but it was a thing in Hawaii because it's such a small little area.
So all I would say about that though is like, I think the challenge is that these governments, it would be far better to have a solution while the money's coming in than trying to deal with the problem after it's already came in and you've got all these empty places, because I don't really like the idea of, if I rightfully or lawfully own property, that someone could then come and change its use after the fact. So it'd be great if there was some way to kind of solve these problems as they're actually occurring, or as you're starting to see them trend before they're so prevalent that the local
people are in denial though. Sometimes it's like written on the wall, like it is happening, and people are like, oh no, they always say that. Oh, they're overreacting. It's
nice to see the money come in for a bit.
Yeah. Like, oh, it will all work out. It's fine. What could go wrong? And you're like, writing on the wall, read it. And they're like, no, my wallet's fat. I'm good.
So this is what we're seeing right now. I'll tell you something about the Canadian housing market that is a little bit scary, and in my opinion, is in Toronto and Vancouver. So in these two cities, because they've had such a boom, what's happening right now is all these developers, they sign up to build more of these large high-rise apartment condo complexes because there's such high demand for them and because the prices just keep going up and up. So oftentimes, as soon as they announce pre-sales, they'll sell out 30-40% of a 120-unit building in the first weekend. Right. And so they're going so fast. But the challenge is once that starts to reach equilibrium, or the shine kind of comes off of it, you've got all these buildings coming onto the market that are still a year, 2-3 years away, that they've got the funding for, they've got the permits for, they're starting to build. They're all going to flood the market 2 or 3 years from now. And then all of a sudden the prices in those little market segments are going to be coming down huge. And I'll explain why I see this in my own local market in Calgary.
Can I ask one quick question?
Oh, sorry, please.
Can you do Airbnbs there? Is that a thing?
You can, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Move forward.
Absolutely. You can.
Okay.
Some buildings don't allow it. Some do allow it.
Okay.
And actually, it's funny. The ones that don't allow it, don't keep their value as well as the ones that do, even though the reason they're not allowing it is because they're trying to keep their value by not diluting it with a bunch of short-term rentals.
Right.
But in a market like ours, people are more intrigued by having an additional stream of income. But what's happened in Calgary in 2014, housing was at an all-time high, and it's still, that's our peak for property values in our city, was 6 years ago. And because of that, all these apartment condos all got constructed. But then the oil market dropped in 2015 and 2016, and they think, okay, that's normal. Calgary goes through these booms and busts all the time in Alberta. And what's going to happen is that we're going to be on the other side of this cycle by the time these apartment condos come to market. Now, the only challenge is that they never got on the other side of that cycle. The oil and gas market stayed slow. All these buildings came to market, and now there's been a glut. And so this is the difference. Last year over year, 5% increase in single family homes, 22% decrease in apartment condos in my city. So I'm selling a property right now for a client that was bought in the downtown core of Calgary in 2016 for $1.2 million. We've had one showing and we're priced at $829. So that property probably needs to be at like $725 and a realization of a $475,000 loss.
Are they willing to do that?
Yeah.
Are they willing to do it? Are they willing to take the hit?
They can afford to, but only because her father was a rich oil and gas CEO and had a good exit. But many people can't. That's the thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And she doesn't want to, and I don't want her to either. Like, I want to see it come back. I'd like to, but
this is a long time watcher right here. This is famous Amos. He calls me Guru because I used to be your real estate whisperer. If you took it out, it's Rue. So he calls me Guru. Everyone smash the like button. Thank you. You have a wonderful evening. Holy moly. That is a huge price drop. Price drop. Yeah, it is. And I don't know how long you've been doing this, but I saw prices. Well, I'm going to give you a perfect example. In Florida, I lived in Orlando. I bought my house for $135. 3 years later, we sold it for $238,000. That house was never worth $238,000. It was a 1,500 square foot. It was built in the early 90s. We had fixed it up, don't get me wrong, and we put a new roof and we done everything to it to, bring it up to market. But at that time, I'm like, this is ridiculous. I mean, nearly is almost $100,000. It is $100,000 more than we purchased it for, which I was like, yay, I got out of there. The guy who bought that house for $238 ended up selling it 8.5 years later for $157.
Yeah.
I felt so bad. And like guilty, like I felt like I did something wrong. But I mean, that was just what the market was, but I felt terrible.
Well, I mean, I don't know what a person's even supposed to do. Like it cuts both ways. And that's the challenge. I know we had built our first home, my wife and I, in like 2004. So we've been married about 4 or 5 years or so, 3-4 years at that point in time. We bought a place for $250,000. Which is insane now because it was a gorgeous home. And we sold it 9 months later, like, oh my gosh, this is so crazy expensive. We can't afford it. And we sold it for $335 9 months later.
Wow.
Then we were like, okay, well, we're renting. I'm playing video games all again, like as a, grown ass adult. Sorry. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, this is terrible. And we went and traveled Europe. We had some fun. And then we look at the housing market like 4 months later, and that same house is $385. So we sign up with the new builder who takes 1 year to build. And while we sign up at $385, by the time we take possession, we could sell it for $580 with no fence, no grass, no basement development, just basic finishings inside.
So you did that, right?
We took the possession at this like perfect time in history. And we thought, do we just sell right now? But everything has went up. So your psychological is like, it's just going to keep going up. So
Uh-huh.
we move in and we realize like also, hey, at some point in time, like it's great to have a good investment, but we also wanted to have a family and a life. And we didn't want our housing to be like this
Your
trap of
prison.
we just switch every couple of years and stuff, trying to
Mm-hmm.
like seek gains and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
anyways, we do the lawn, we finish the basement, we do upgrades and all that stuff through the house, sell it 5 years later for the same price we could have sold it for without any of those upgrades 5 years earlier, because that's just the way the time goes. So it worked out well.
None of us have a crystal ball.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
just don't know. You don't
Yeah.
know. I do know one thing though. It's like in the face of the alternative of
Mm-hmm.
not owning, of not having home ownership in some form, I still would rather have that name on that title and hold it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just me.
Chris wants to know, what do you think about the London, Ontario housing market? I hope I said that right. Ontario.
Okay, the London, Ontario housing market, it's been going up really, really strong. So Ontario's had a very strong housing market, and I think rightly so. I think the challenges with even in Ontario, for example, is wages haven't increased at the same price as housing. And it's not like the local economy in London has went that well. And I think right now, a lot of Ontario and BC with these are experiencing the benefits of a housing boom that is sort of like it's a reinforcement economy where one thing goes great, like, bunch of, housing goes up. So they build a bunch more and that creates more economy. And so that attracts more business and more people and investors. But at the end of the day, when sort of the heat comes into these markets, is there fundamentals left behind? And I mean, I think that's a good question across most markets. I think that's definitely true in London. The real question is this just a sign of things to come, or is there some equilibrium that will eventually be met with wages increasing or an economy that increases at a time when the housing doesn't, or will housing come back down again? I don't know the answer.
I got another one for you. I'm stuck paying a house for $700,000, paying for a $700,000 house on the outskirts of Calgary. Got $300,000 left, but unemployed. Can't sell because max I'll get is $500,000. I'm working three minimum wage jobs. This is insane. Do you guys have a forbearance? Do you guys have that there for people that could be out of work right now?
Yeah. So, I mean, is it Zelmast? All right. Zelmast. Yeah. So that's a tough spot. And I know a lot of Calgarians are in that position right now. There is forbearance. And so if you have had an opportunity, I think we call it up here, essentially mortgage deferral. And I think
deference,
for up to 5 to 6 months. And so I think that's there. If you have done that, if you have not done that, I don't think there's the same negative connotations to your credit or to remortgaging down the road as there is in the States. We definitely have a little bit less, or what appears to be less predatory policies by the banks. So I would suggest looking into that for sure. If you find yourself in a situation that feels unsustainable, the thing that you should know right now is that even if you should just talk to someone, like talk to me, talk to a local professional about what your actual value of your house is worth. The reason why Kristina knows who I am is because I only have had my license for the last few years in the market. And I have had to work super hard to get my clients' homes properly exposed. So we use video marketing and make like cinematic video tours to a degree that, I've had a lot of success from it, and I've sold just about 50 homes this year. And because of that, it's all came from video marketing. The reason why is because I knew that my clients, and a lot of times are, let's say there's 7 homes for sale in the market, but there's only 2 or 3 buyers. And that's the real challenge about our local market. And because of that, we need to make sure that our clients' homes stand out so we can attract one of those buyers and then retain the value of the house.
I'm throwing one of these up here just because.
Oh yeah. So this is that $289,000 townhome.
But he makes some very sexy videos, and he does everything he can because he knows that his market it's tough. So you got to do polish it up as much as possible. You got to put it as many eyes as possible. You know a lot, even though you haven't necessarily been in the business forever. You're very, very good in understanding of what your market is doing. And there's people that have been doing real estate for eons that don't know as much as you do. So I would trust your advice.
I would say all Albertans all Albertans that are watching the live stream right now, they know that many agents in our economy had it pretty easy for many years, because in a booming economy, that does not make a good sailor with those calm seas, right? And that's the challenge. And so I've never had a good economy. I've never known what it's like to just throw a house on the market and everyone buys it just because you put a photo on the internet and signs in the yard. So I always had to come up with some unique way to actually kind of peel business away and actually help the homes sell. And I think so it's one of the things that you guys might not know, but outside of this live stream, Kristina and I talk a lot with other agents, and we do a lot of agent education across North America. And one of the things that we're continually harping on is like, listen, at some point in time, it's not going to be like the housing market is right now in the States. These agents need to up their game and actually provide real value to their clients if they want to sell, if they want to actually help them sell their homes, not just, another agent selling themselves, which I think we're all kind of sick of.
Yeah, nobody cares about us. That's why that's one of my biggest things I tell real estate agents. I'm like, hey, just 1 minute, just to let you know, nobody cares about you. I tell real estate agents all the time. It's not about you, it's about them. Sorry.
Exactly.
I don't know where that came from. I don't know why that became a thing, but I never look at it as what's in it for me. I always look at it as what can I do for them?
Yeah,
always. And that's how you are too. And that's why I think we get along so well.
Well, before I got my license, I worked with the supposed top producers in my city and the luxury agents to sell my properties that I had worked really hard. And they would take credit after I spent the last 9 months like living in the basement with like my newborn and my wife while I was upstairs sanding drywall and installing cabinets. And then at the end, they would put it on the market and we'd get, some showings in the first week and get an offer. And they'd be like, wow, see, like, look what I did. And I'm like, you did nothing.
Look how awesome I am. I'm so great.
Yeah, exactly.
Urban Explorer says that Emma has a house that she bought in Liverpool, that's in England, in 2010 for 170. It's now selling for 60,000. I didn't know the market in England has changed.
What if that's like a Brexit thing, or is that politics? Let's say I
wouldn't know. I would have to talk to see. I didn't know anything about the Canadian market, so like that would be something I would have to ask somebody in England.
Yeah.
In Edmonton, I feel you road that really works. Okay.
Catherine makes a good point there. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Catherine makes a point. She says your primary residence should not be an investment. It should be what you need. And I think this is the biggest challenge that we find all the time right now, because no one knows what the future holds. But you do know one thing is there's rain and there's snow and you need protection from the elements. So you need housing. So whether it's rent or a mortgage, it's like one of those basic human needs. So I think if you're not looking at it as like buying a house now and then flipping it in 12 months, I think this is the reason why everyone wants to be really prudent and cautious with their investing. And I'm super cautious and conservative with my clients' money and investments, because we don't know what the little ups and downs in the road, but we do know over the next 10, 15, 20 years, odds are it makes sense to buy. And what I'm telling clients in my market right now is, look, I don't know, there could be room to fall. There could be a whole bunch of different things going on. But at the end of the day, it's hard to imagine a more favorable environment than to buy in the middle of a recession, in the middle of this global thing we got going on, and at a time where housing is at the lowest it's been in like nearly 2 decades. Like it's hard to imagine more favorable conditions for a buyer. Oh yeah, if you're looking at this video right now, this is an empty home that some builders asked me to sell, and so in order to do so, I hired a ballerina to come in. And you should really.
Who does that? That's the whole thing. Like, who does that for a client? Like, you do go above and beyond for your for your clients. I just wanted people to see what incredible stuff that you do for your clients. And he makes it. It isn't like he hires some special videographer. He does this. Look at our friend right here, Javier Venata. He's a real estate agent out of Phoenix, Arizona, a phenom in the YouTube sphere, a good friend of mine. He says Smallhorn 2024.
I'll tell you what, I've watched some of Javier's stuff and it's brilliant. Really great stuff, Javier.
He's good. I always tell people. Joel says, I agree with you, Catherine. It used to be like that, but now most people just think about the money and what they can get. And some people, I'm sure this happens in your area as well, but they become house poor. They're so in love with the idea of having a house and they want it to fit all of what they, like all their hopes and dreams, that it's not a smart thing to do. Mm-hmm. Like they buy this house and then you can't even fill it up with furniture, and then you go to resell them.
That was us in our 20s. That's what we did.
Well, yeah. And then you go to resell them and you're like, can you put some pictures on the wall? They're like, yeah, well, we just kind of got in over our heads. That happened a lot, especially because we had the hurricanes here. I mean, we'll just get off this topic, but we had a lot of hurricanes here. Then Katrina had hit. A bunch of people bought houses here. They didn't have a lot of stuff to begin with. Then the housing prices started tanking and they bought more than they could afford. And then you had to show these houses with that looked like refugees, that were living it. They would have air mattresses and stuff. So they just wanted to sell their home and move back home. They wanted to go back to New Orleans after everything had changed. So Red Light Wine says, are you familiar with the Carter Plantation subdivision in Livingston? I really think that area has taken a nosedive. Is such a shame. Yep, Carter Plantation is nice. But just like any place around here, sometimes they start off really like woohoo, and then they kind of but then they'll come back. It always comes back. Well, I want to thank you very. Are you going to start dancing and selling videos? I do my own little dance. I'm not like super sexy. I'm not like Brad. I'll do it with a wig and I'll do it a little less fancy. Brad, thank you so much for educating me and educating my viewers and everybody that has given super chats and everything. I want to thank you very much for spending an hour with us talking about your housing market, because I didn't know, and I wasn't even going to pretend to know. Sometimes you can fake it, but this wasn't something I could even come close to faking it. What did I learn? I learned that the housing market, because your crisis has to do with foreign investors, which had no idea. Also learned a little bit about your loans and how you do them there. And if you want 20%, if you want to do it less than 20%, you have to buy, you have an extra insurance on it. I think we call it PMI here.
Okay.
PMI insurance, but you have it called something else. But it's interesting. It is interesting. And I want to thank you. Want to say anything to anybody?
Yes, I do. So first off, I want to say to Kristina, thank you so much for having me on your incredible channel. It's super inspiring to see how it's blowing up this year. And I think it's obvious why, because you're such a genuine and authentic voice. And I know you're like my go-to resource to figure out what's going on in the States without all the fluff. So I love it. And I really, really appreciate it. Anyone who's watched in and interested in following or seeing anything that I do, you can just go over to my YouTube channel.
Yes.
You can put my name in.
Put your stuff in there.
Oh yeah, cool. You can just check it out there and check out some of our videos. We're trying to get onto doing more content like Kristina, but we've been so busy just creating these little listing videos that we do.
All right, everybody. Well, I want to say thank you, Brad, and thank you everybody for stopping in. Bye-bye. Wave to the camera. You got to wave bye.
See you guys.
Bye.